You need to hear this because most people never see it coming. The moment you stopped pursuing them, they noticed immediately, but not in the way you might expect. Not with relief or casual indifference. They noticed with a sudden and almost unsettling clarity, the kind that shakes their inner thoughts right down to the core. When you stop chasing, the world around them does not just shift slightly. Something deeper begins to happen inside them, quietly and without warning. The person you once went after begins a slow, unseen process of breaking down internally. And this is where things become uncomfortable for them. They start sensing an empty space where your attention, effort, and emotional energy used to be. A space they never recognized before suddenly feels wide, silent, and impossible to ignore. They are not used to this kind of emotional silence, so they begin to feel uneasy, even anxious, without fully understanding why. Your absence is not experienced as simple absence in their mind. It works more like a mirror. It reflects parts of themselves they never wanted to look at. They slowly realize that the sense of control or emotional power they thought they had over you is no longer there. And when that illusion of control disappears, their inner world becomes restless. They cannot easily explain this discomfort, but they feel it growing in the background of everything they do. Their thoughts start turning inward in ways they cannot stop. Quiet questions begin to appear. Did they value you properly? Did they misunderstand your worth? Did they assume you would always stay emotionally available? These thoughts do not arrive all at once. They build gradually, and once they start, they do not leave easily. At night, when everything is silent, those thoughts become louder. They begin to wonder if what they wanted was really you, or just the feeling of being important through your attention. And as soon as you are no longer there in the same way, that internal image they built starts to weaken and collapse. But they are not fully aware of it yet. In their conscious mind, they still try to act normal, but underneath, something is shifting and splitting. Their mind becomes divided between hope and fear. Hope that things can return to how they were. Fear that they have already lost something they did not properly understand. This inner conflict creates a kind of emotional tension that they carry everywhere, even when they appear calm on the outside. They may look stable, even unaffected, but internally there is pressure building. They start imagining your life without them in it. You talking to others, smiling freely, moving forward, not waiting, not pausing. These mental images do not feel neutral to them. They create emotional discomfort, sometimes even pain. And alongside that comes something more complicated, not just longing, but also frustration, guilt, and quiet anger that they cannot fully explain to themselves. Most people do not face this inner conflict directly. They try to avoid it, distract themselves, or suppress it. But your withdrawal makes avoidance harder. You unintentionally force them into a state of emotional confrontation. Something inside them begins to wake up, something that has been ignored for a long time. Old thoughts, buried emotions, and unspoken fears start rising again. That inner voice becomes stronger. It pushes them to remember everything between you. Every conversation, every pause, every look, every small moment that once felt ordinary but now feels significant. They replay things again and again, trying to find meaning, trying to understand where things shifted. Their mind searches for certainty, but finds none. And this is where the discomfort deepens. Because the human mind does not like unfinished emotional situations. It hates uncertainty more than rejection. Rejection has structure, it has an ending. Absence does not. Absence leaves open space, and that space gets filled with imagination, doubt, and emotional instability. They begin to question their own actions. Did they push too hard? Did they misread you? Did they fail to appreciate something valuable while they had access to it? These questions do not bring peace. They create mental loops. And in those loops, their pride starts to struggle, because pride does not accept confusion easily. At first, the reaction is subtle. A thought of reaching out, a moment of checking your presence, a curiosity about what you are doing. But over time, these small impulses grow stronger. Emotional tension increases. They begin to feel stuck between wanting to reconnect and fearing rejection or loss of control. This is not a calm emotional state. It is internal conflict. One part of them wants closeness, attention, reconnection. Another part resists it out of fear, pride, or emotional self-protection. This creates imbalance inside them, and that imbalance does not disappear quickly. As time continues, your distance becomes more noticeable in their daily thoughts. Even when they are busy, even when they try to focus elsewhere, your presence still returns to their mind without effort. Not because you are actively trying to be there, but because something inside them has not resolved your absence. They may appear composed externally, continuing their routine, fulfilling responsibilities, interacting with others normally. But internally, there is repetition, reflection, and emotional processing happening in silence. The mind keeps returning to what feels unresolved. And here is what becomes most important in this entire dynamic. Your silence is not empty to them. It is active. It creates reflection. It creates emotional pressure. It forces awareness. It reveals what was previously ignored or avoided, and the longer it continues, the stronger that internal process becomes. They begin noticing things they previously overlooked. The way you carried yourself, the way you responded differently, the way your presence affected their emotions more than they admitted at the time. Each memory becomes sharper, more meaningful, and more emotionally charged than before. And in that space of reflection, imagination begins to grow. They start thinking of scenarios that never existed before. What if things were handled differently? What if they acted sooner? What if they lose you completely? These thoughts do not stay under control. They repeat, they expand, they intensify. At the same time, emotional contradictions become stronger. They want closeness, but fear vulnerability. They want clarity, but cannot accept the truth easily. They want control, but realize they no longer fully have it. This contradiction creates emotional pressure that builds quietly but consistently. And here is the part they do not openly admit. Your absence has changed their internal emotional structure. Not just their thoughts about you, but the way they process attachment, loss, and emotional control itself. Something has shifted inside them permanently, even if they try to ignore it. Now they are stuck in a place they cannot easily escape, a place between emotional attachment and emotional resistance, between wanting to move forward and being pulled backward by memory, between pride and emotional need. And this stuck state does not resolve quickly. It begins showing up in subtle ways: restlessness, sudden thoughts, emotional discomfort without clear reason, moments of reflection that feel heavier than expected, even physical sensations of tension or unease that come without warning. And all of this continues because nothing is fully resolved, nothing is fully expressed, nothing is fully closed. Your absence created space, and that space did not stay empty. It filled with emotion, reflection, and inner conflict that keeps expanding quietly over time. And now they are at a point where they cannot ignore it the same way anymore. Something inside them is shifting, slowly but steadily. Even if they do not fully understand it yet, their inner world is no longer calm. It has already started changing, and that change is still unfolding. Here is the difficult truth they eventually have to face. Your absence is not just emptiness, it becomes a reflection they cannot easily escape from. And what appears in that reflection unsettles them deeply. They begin to see their real self without any protection or illusion. They see their vulnerability, their unmet emotional needs, and their hidden fear of depending on someone else. They feel disturbed by their own emotions. For a long time, they maintained an image of control, independence, and emotional distance. But your absence quietly removes those layers without effort, without confrontation, without struggle. Many people believe influence comes only through action or pursuit, but they misunderstand the power of withdrawal. Silence can speak louder than presence. Stepping back can have more impact than moving closer. Refusing to chase becomes a form of clarity that cannot be ignored. Inside them, something begins to shift. Thoughts they had buried start to rise again. Feelings they suppressed begin to surface. The identity they carefully constructed starts to shake under its own weight. A mixture of desire and resistance builds within them. They feel pulled toward you while also feeling frustration toward that pull. Emotion and confusion become intertwined, creating inner tension they cannot easily resolve. At times, they may even find themselves reaching for their phone, wanting to contact you, then stopping halfway. Awareness of their own hesitation creates more inner conflict. This is where the internal struggle deepens. Human beings always carry hidden emotional spaces, places where unspoken fears and unfulfilled desires stay stored. When external control weakens, those inner spaces become louder. They might appear calm on the surface, but internally there is movement, unrest, and emotional noise. Your absence becomes a trigger for reflection they cannot fully control. They begin imagining scenarios, replaying memories, and constructing meaning out of silence. Each imagined moment where you move forward without them affects their sense of pride and emotional balance. This is where the mind begins filling empty space on its own. When clarity is not given, the brain creates its own interpretation. They start analyzing past conversations, searching for meaning in small details that once felt unimportant. Every memory becomes emotionally charged. Every unanswered question becomes heavier over time. Below conscious thought, deeper instincts begin to take over. The part of the mind that reacts before logic steps in starts shaping emotional responses. You remain present in that internal space, not as a person they can reach easily, but as a presence they cannot ignore. At times, they may feel the urge to reconnect, not out of clarity, but out of emotional pressure and uncertainty. Because when absence becomes strong enough, control feels weaker. Desire and confusion begin to override logic. The mind struggles between holding on and letting go. This creates emotional instability they cannot fully understand. Even small signs of your life without them feel amplified in their perception. What they once overlooked now feels significant. What makes this even more intense is that you are not actively creating this reaction. It is happening within them. Your silence is not forcing anything. It is simply revealing what was already there beneath surface-level certainty. And here lies the deeper truth. This is not just emotional attachment. It becomes a psychological confrontation with themselves. They are no longer only thinking about you. They are also facing the parts of themselves they avoided for a long time. The version of them that needs, that feels, that hopes, and that fears being unseen. At this stage, confusion increases. They want connection, but they fear vulnerability. They want closeness, but they resist emotional exposure. This internal contradiction creates further distance inside their own mind. The more they try to regain control, the more aware they become of their lack of control. Your absence, in this sense, becomes a mirror. Not a punishment, not a game, but a reflection. And in that reflection, they are forced to see emotional truths they previously avoided. Weakness, longing, uncertainty, and attachment all appear at once, without filters. Most people never experience this level of emotional confrontation because most situations do not remove distraction and access at the same time. But when distance becomes real, emotional reality becomes unavoidable. They can no longer hide behind routine interaction or easy reassurance. Now they are placed in a position where they must face themselves without distraction. Some will resist it. Some will feel anger. Some will try to regain contact to escape discomfort. But regardless of response, something inside them changes. Awareness does not disappear once it has been triggered. The deeper truth is simple. You were never something they could fully control or contain. And by stepping back, you did not create confusion, you revealed it. You did not cause instability, you exposed what was already unstable beneath the surface. Silence does something direct confrontation often cannot. It removes interference. It removes illusion. And what remains is clarity they are forced to sit with, even if they are not ready for it. In the end, the situation is no longer only about connection. It becomes about reflection, self-recognition, and emotional awakening. And whether they move toward you or away from you, they will not return to the same inner state they had before. Because once someone is forced to see themselves clearly, they cannot completely unsee it again.